Hello and welcome to RWR Plays TEW 2020. This is chapter 32 of WCW Lives On. And let me start with another apology for the delay in getting this out. So basically right now my personal life is very, very busy. Very, very difficult to balance all the various things that I need to do. Plus, of course, we create the podcast on a kind of nearly weekly basis. The podcast can be found pretty much anywhere you get your podcast, the Random Wrestling Review. And because of that, and this is kind of my third priority if I lump all of my personal stuff into one priority, but that's made up of a lot of little priorities, and then the podcast is my second priority. This is my distinct third priority, and therefore it isn't getting done as much at the moment. Hopefully things will settle down in the not too distant future. Also, hopefully I'll be able to get some time to create a bunch of these episodes so that we are able to stockpile them a little bit and bring them out on a bit more of a regular basis. In the meantime, though, I'm aware that we've kind of left things as they are, just about to go into Halloween Havoc, and I felt like it was high time I delivered on that pay-per-view, so this is what we're doing today. And obviously, just quickly to take you through what took place on Nitro, the last Nitro before Halloween Havoc, AJ Styles and Rey Mysterio Jr. booked themselves a place in the final of the Cruiserweight Grand Prix by winning their semi-finals. AJ Styles defeated Chavo Guerrero Jr. and Rey Mysterio Jr. beat his regular tag team partner, Billy Kidman. We also had a number of things that built up to the pay-per-view. Bill Goldberg and Jim Duggan obviously defeated Team Canada to secure their place in the tag team title match against Totally Buff. We also had a chaotic 10-man tag main event which saw Curt, Hennig, DDP, Booker T, Ric Flair and Sting defeat Scott Steiner, Rick Steiner, Jeff Jarrett, Shane Douglas and Kevin Nash in the main event of that one. Pretty damn big match and a pretty decent one at that too. Anyway, you've waited long enough for this, so it is time. Let's move on to Halloween Havoc. And we are in California, the StubHub Center, in front of 27,000 people for Halloween Havoc. So that gives you some indication of how much we've continued to grow as this game has gone on. And in the pre-show to start us off, we have Mark Jindrak and Sean Stasiak against the European Union, with the European Union picking up the victory in 8 minutes and 28 seconds when Norman Smiley pinned Mark Jindrak. And Smiley had a really good performance here of 54. Everybody above 40, which was really nice to see. And Sean Stasiak was actually off his game. So a segment rating of 51, a very nice way to kick things off and get the crowd warmed up ahead of the main show. And that is upon us right now. And we begin with Jeff Jarrett coming to the ring with John Cena and Mike Sanders. Jarrett says that he's not interested in waiting for tonight's main event. He is ready to compete right now, and as world champion of WCW, he has the right to pick and choose when his match takes place, so he's calling out Booker T to face him immediately. Eric Bischoff then comes out and says that Jarrett is being unreasonable. He says that the match is set to start later tonight, and Booker T can't possibly be ready as it's unlikely he'll have started his warm-up 2 hours before the match was supposed to start. However, Booker T's music then hits, and he comes out and he interrupts Jarrett and Bischoff. Booker says that the warm-up means nothing. He's always ready to take back his world title and is itching to get started. It is therefore agreed, and the match will go ahead as the opener of the night. A segment rating here of 69. Not bad at all. Sanders and John Cena didn't do much to help this segment, but Jarrett, Booker T and Eric Bischoff are all good. And in that match, it was a bout that had fantastic heat and great wrestling, and yet got a segment rating of only 58. What happened here is that John Cena and Mike Sanders interjected themselves in the match, but with the referee down and the pair putting the boots to Booker after Booker had just hit Jarrett with the bookend, the Filthy Animals music hits. Conan and Billy Kidman then come to the ring and fight off Cena and Sanders, leaving Booker T and Jeff Jarrett alone in the ring. Booker then ducks a clothesline, counters with another bookend, and takes the victory to reclaim the WCW World Heavyweight title. And Jeff Jarrett had an in-ring performance of 80, Booker T has 72. This should have done so much better than it did in terms of a segment rating of 58. But, and this is why I put this on first on the night, was that I got the booking warning that this was the fourth time the match had been done recently, and therefore was going to struggle if it didn't really outperform those matches, and it did not do that. And I was worried that was going to be the case. I was worried that we'd put this out in the main event position, and then it would really bring down the overall rating of the show. So I thought, actually, I need to protect myself against that, and we put it in the opening match. So Booker T wins the World Championship. He obviously does it with the help of the Filthy Animals, who are obviously disappointed following Conan's attempt at the title, where he was defeated because of the help of Mike Sanders and John Cena, and therefore they help Booker T, and Booker T wins the WCW World Heavyweight title. After the match, Booker T celebrates winning the WCW title back with Conan and Billy Kidman for a segment rating of 72, just a little bit of extra after the match to keep this, to make this feel a little bit more special. And obviously the segment rating being far better than the match was a good thing. Match number 2 might also be a surprise because it is Kevin Nash versus DDP in their Loser Leaves WCW contest, and both men give their all during this one. DDP managing to somehow get his shoulder up after a jackknife powerbomb, and Nash also kicking out of a diamond cutter, but eventually DDP getting the win when he hits a second diamond cutter and condemns Kevin Nash to leave WCW. So this was a 16-minute and 52-second match and got a segment rating of 80, so a gigantic rating. Not surprising given that we had a really good story going into this, and both Nash and to a lesser extent DDP have been performing really well. And this whole match came about because Kevin Nash's contract was always running down to the end of October, and he also had been a really negative influence from the very beginning of the series in terms of backstage. Now, as that's happened over time, him being a bad backstage influence has not been such a problem, as we've been able to mollify the roster, and in the main they're pretty happy. But as a consequence of having to carry Nash, and again to a lesser extent other wrestlers who are a little bit of a poor influence, I have been kind of restricted in who I'm allowing myself to sign, because I've been trying to make sure that we keep that kind of backstage harmony. But now with Kevin Nash kind of on the brink of his contract coming up, I did go back and forth about whether to re-sign him, because he actually has been performing excellently for me. But I decided that we needed a bit more freedom backstage to be able to bring in who we wanted, and eliminating Nash from the roster and not re-signing him to that contract was actually going to be beneficial to us. So I decided to wait until his contract potentially came up and then see what he would be interested in, and then make a decision on whether to keep him or otherwise. As it happened, Nash himself decided he didn't want to re-sign with the company, and he has subsequently signed for WWE. But this is Kevin Nash's last match. DDP defeats him in this Loser Leaves WCW contest. In the post-match, Kevin Nash gets up to his feet after DDP has left the ring area and looks out to the audience. Some boo him and take delight in his loss. Others applaud his efforts as he leaves the ring dejected. A segment rating here of 74. Not quite the last we'll see of Kevin Nash, and we'll see what that means in just a moment. So the next match is for the Cruiserweight Tag Team titles and sees the FBI versus Chaos Theory. Here, Johnny the Bull and Balls Mahoney are not a factor in the match, as they are sent to the back by the referee early in the contest, and then James Maritato submits Mikey Whipwreck to retain the belts for the FBI, who make their second defense of that title. A segment rating of 53, which is really good. Whipwreck and Tajiri of 44, James Maritato of 54, so he's undoubtedly the best performer of this lot, and Cicero of 36. But a decent match here, really decent match for the Cruiserweight Tag Team titles. Next up, we've got Sean O'Haire versus Prodigy, and during this one, both Vampiro and Jester interfere to help their Gothic Collective teammate come out with the victory. Segment rating of 58, Sean O'Haire of 53, Prodigy of 47. Not amazing, but not too bad either. And Prodigy gets a quite big victory for him over his perhaps more touted former teammate. So I said it wasn't the last we've seen of Kevin Nash, and instead this is the last we'll see of Kevin Nash. He's backstage with Tony Schiavone, who catches up with him following his loss earlier to DDP. Schiavone says that tonight is the last night Kevin Nash will be in WCW. He says he knows many people have their issues with Big Sexy, but nobody can deny the impact he's had on the company. Schiavone asks Nash how he's feeling. Nash says that during the last 6 years, he revolutionized the business both on screen and in the back. He says the money is flowing all over wrestling and the boys in the back have never had it so good, and he said that was because of him. He adds, however, that he accepts that he's not always done the right thing or always been the good guy. He says that there are things that other people think he should be ashamed of. He says that there is only one thing he's ashamed of since coming to WCW, and that is in this bag, at which point he holds a cotton purse-like bag up and hands it to Tony Schiavone. Nash says that he wants Tony Schiavone to give the bag to the person who it belongs to, and says that hopefully it will show people that he wasn't such a bad guy after all. Nash then walks off with Schiavone looking a little confused, holding the bag. So this is the end of Kevin Nash's period in WCW, and I wanted him to be able to say some of those things because I do think Nash did revolutionize the business somewhat, not on his own obviously, with others, in terms of he revolutionized the on-air product of mainstream North American wrestling by kind of bringing this more reality-based direction to WCW, along with Scott Hall and the creative vision of Eric Bischoff and Hulk Hogan and others. But also in the contracts that he and Scott Hall managed to negotiate for themselves with WCW, that ultimately ended up with Vince McMahon then starting to offer downside guarantees in the WWF, which they had not done before. They were very much on a much less secure footing in terms of the contracts they were providing to people. He started to give people downside guarantees, which meant that even wrestlers going into WWF had to start to receive minimum amounts of money each month, which obviously hadn't been in place prior to Nash and Hall striking their deals with WCW. So I wanted him to get the chance to say that, and also kind of put in place this little breadcrumb for something that's coming in the next few episodes of Nitro. Okay, so next up we have got Scott Steiner versus Curt Hennig. They've obviously been in a feud as of late, and this one was a great match. Scott Steiner defeating Curt Hennig in 16 minutes and 9 seconds by pinfall. Another segment rating of 80. Steiner in 86, Curt Hennig at 63. Very decent. Steiner visibly tiring towards the end, so this is the one issue I've got with Steiner. Whilst he's really popular and very good in the ring, he hasn't got a lot of stamina, and he isn't going to be able to have really long matches like I would like him to be able to do, which is a disappointment, but all the same, Steiner comes out on top here. And next up, another big grudge match as Shane Douglas faces Ric Flair. And in this one, Shane Douglas wins with a handful of tights after 15 minutes and 40 seconds for a segment rating of 82. Shane Douglas only a 62, but Flair at 85. I can reveal that Flair was furious about having to do this job. He was not happy at all. I can only assume that he feels he's too big to do the job, and I think with some justification given the way he's been performing as of late and his popularity level at this point in time. But all the same, Douglas comes out on top here. So next, it's the match for the WCW World Tag Team titles, and what happens is that the champions cut the ring off on Duggan and work him over pretty bad in the start of the match. Goldberg then gets the hot tag, but due to some shenanigans, the heels manage to prevent the ref seeing it, leading to him not allowing Goldberg in the ring. Bagwell then sneaks around behind Goldberg, and after spotting him, Goldberg chases him around the ring. Meanwhile, with the ref distracted by the chase, in the ring, Luger hits Duggan with one of the tag belts. Bagwell runs to the ring. Goldberg continues to chase him, but this alerts the ref to the fact that Luger is covering Duggan, and he counts 3 for the champs to retain. Bagwell briefly stops running when he realizes his team has won and lifts his arms in celebration, allowing Goldberg to spear him out of his boots on the outside. He then runs Luger off and checks on his partner as Totally Buff wearily leave the ringside, but still with their belts. So segment rating here of 73, a little bit of a convoluted finish, but ultimately the idea being that Goldberg was entirely protected during the end of this match, and Duggan is the one who gets pinned after 12 minutes and 40 seconds. They've got it that Buff wins the match by pinfall. Obviously, I didn't specify which of the two should win the match, but whatever the case, my events are what happened, and Totally Buff make defense number 5 of the World Tag Team titles. You can see here Goldberg, a performance of 95, so his overall popularity and performance is still super high. Actually, as I've told the story, effectively Goldberg wasn't even in the ring for a moment during this match, and Duggan pretty much carried his side of the bargain for the match, but that would have probably made the segment rating less than it was. Bagwell's looking really good as well, segment rating of 70 here. So still a couple of matches left, and first of those is the Cruiserweight Grand Prix final. But before we get there, we have got a backstage segment with Shane Douglas talking about his victory over Ric Flair. Schiavone asks Douglas whether his win over Ric Flair was an upset. Douglas says he doesn't comprehend the mind of someone who would think that his victory over the broken down Nature Boy could ever be seen as an upset. He says that he has known it all along, he's been telling anyone who'll listen for years, and now he's finally been able to prove that Ric Flair isn't in the same class as the franchise. Segment rating here 56 as Douglas addresses his victory over Flair. So as I said, 2 matches left, the first of which is the Cruiserweight Grand Prix final, and it's Rey Mysterio Jr. versus AJ Styles, won by Rey Jr. in 14:59 by pinfall with a roll-up. Rey Mysterio Jr. wins the WCW Cruiserweight Grand Prix, segment rating of 70, which is really decent. Rey Mysterio Jr. had an in-ring performance of 82, but Styles, probably the best performance we've seen from him in the WCW so far with a 51. Rey Mysterio Jr. came out of the match looking good, and Rey Jr. wins the Cruiserweight Grand Prix final, the inaugural Cruiserweight Grand Prix. And so our main event is for the United States Heavyweight title. It is Mike Awesome versus Sting. And in this one, Awesome uses the Awesome Bomb and pins Sting cleanly to retain the title. A segment rating of 75, 18 minutes and 17 seconds this one went. Mike Awesome makes his 5th defense of the US title. And you can see here Sting had an in-ring performance of 83. I've got to be honest, I'm a little bit disappointed by this. I was hoping that Awesome's performance would be a bit better than 70, and that Sting would be ever so slightly better as well, and we'd see a segment rating of around 80. But this is still fine and much better than it would have been had we had Booker T and Jeff Jarrett in the main event. Mike Awesome gets a clean victory over Sting, so a massive victory for him in the main event of Halloween Havoc. So we've put him over big in terms of that victory. And that is the end of Halloween Havoc. A strange order to the show, I accept. It was a bit of an odd one. I think the problem we've got is that ultimately I knew that the Booker T Jeff Jarrett match was going to struggle to hit the kind of rating I wanted it to, because it was technically only the 3rd match between the two, but the match that I'd done at the previous pay-per-view, I'd broken into 2 separate matches, because we had the initial match where Booker T won, but by DQ or count out, one of the two, and then it was restarted due to a clause in the contract, and they had a separate match which was then won by Jeff Jarrett. And so because of that, actually it was won by Booker T, sorry, he beat Jeff Jarrett, but ultimately that meant that we'd had 2 matches between the two already, which meant that ultimately this was the 4th match in a very short space of time, and the game does ultimately penalise that when that's the case. You know, if you put more than 3 matches in a very short space of time, it penalises the rating, and I was so cognizant of that I needed them to go on first. Then what's more is I wanted DDP and Kevin Nash to be the main event, if I'm honest. That was my plan a long time ago when I originally planned for this, and I hoped that Nash's contract would see him able to appear the following night on Nitro if that happened, because I really wanted to do the angle where he speaks to Tony Schiavone and gives him this bag during that segment, and I wanted that to happen on Nitro. But his contract literally runs out this night, and so I couldn't do that, and so I had to have space for another angle between Kevin Nash and someone after their match, and I just felt like if it went on last, there would be no time to do that, or we'd have to do it in the ring, or it'd have to be, just a little bit different than I wanted it to be. So that's the reason why ultimately Mike Awesome and Sting had the main event for the US title. So that's the show. It was an overall rating of 75. Cannot be unhappy with that. And some big matches, obviously Shane Douglas versus Ric Flair is one of the best we've had so far. Steiner versus Curt Hennig, and DDP versus Kevin Nash, both 80s. We had ratings of 70 in the Rey Mysterio AJ Styles match, 73 in the tag team title match, and 75 in the main event. Pretty much everywhere there is good ratings, and I'm really, really pleased with it. So in terms of the post-show speech, I think we need to first of all DDP wasn't actually that great. I think first of all Ric Flair telling him that he's awesome, because he put over Shane Douglas when he really didn't want to. So I feel like that has to happen. What else have we got here? I think we'll give Scott Steiner some more props because, you know, he's been excellent again. And I think Sting did pretty well in the main event. So, yeah, I wasn't overly taken by DDP's performance, but that'll do. Flair seemed pleased. Steiner was very happy. Sting was happy. Great. So that is Halloween Havoc. And again, I have to apologize for the delay in getting it to you. I know you've been waiting for it for a while, and it's just a quirk of life. Ultimately, this is just one of a number of different things I'm trying to do all at once, and it's very difficult to do so. You can see here a little bit of a sort of, I guess, teaser for what's to come in the future. WWE last night revealed in short press release that Eddie Guerrero had left the company. His contract's expired, and he will be moving on. And what might that mean for Eddie Guerrero? Keep watching, I guess, to find out when the next video comes out, and I will endeavor to get that to you as soon as I can. In terms of our size, let's just give you an update in terms of where the company is. So you can see here we just did a monster attendance for a show here in the Southwest. That's at 65 in terms of its popularity. We've got 66 in the Southeast. And we've also got a 64 in New England, 64 in Midwest, 64 in Mid-South, 66 in Mid-Atlantic. We're doing really well across the board in America. To get to big, though, we have to achieve 77 popularity in at least 5 mainland American regions. So we've got some way to go before we're at that level, but certainly we continue to grow in terms of our overall size. So that is everything I wanted to cover with you today for this chapter 32. As we move into the next few episodes into November, of course, of 2001, we will be building up to the last 2 pay-per-views of the year. And as I've said from the very beginning, I am committed, however long it takes me, I am committed to getting to at least Starrcade with this series. Whether the series continues beyond that is still up in the air at this point in time. Again, it will depend on what time I've got available. It will depend on, whether I can get a bunch of episodes done in one block and then sort of gradually put them out. And it will also depend, of course, on just generally whether or not there's an appetite from yourselves to continue the story beyond then. Let me know if that's something that you are interested in. Obviously, I'll also take into account the number of views that these videos are getting, because I don't want to do it if nobody's watching. That would be pointless. But thanks for watching the episode today and all the series. If you've been with us since the beginning, give us a like on this video if you did indeed enjoy it, and also give us a subscribe, which will help kind of motivate me more to get these videos out, because obviously the more people that are watching, the more motivated I'll be to continue the series on. What I will say though, regardless of whether the series goes on beyond Starrcade or not, I have got plans in place, kind of high level plans at the moment, right the way through till about July, August of 2002. So, and those plans may change as I get closer and closer to them, but there is an outline of a plan to get me to there if we do indeed continue the series. So even if I only stop at the Starrcade, I may indeed do an extra episode just to talk through what I had in mind for the future, but we will get to that when we get to it. And there's still sort of 9-10 episodes, I think, till we get to that point. Anyway, that is enough from me. Until the next time we are with you together, thank you very much for watching.